For nearly 25 years, Pastor Steve and Jan Rasmussen have shared stories about life in East Africa and the work of TEAM, Training East African Ministers. TEAM provides training and education to active pastors, missionaries, and other ministers in East Africa and beyond. Last year, a few of us traveled with them to actually see and experience the places where the TEAM ministry is in active operation. On Tuesday, November 28th, we arrived in Nairobi late at night and settled in at the Kijiji Guest House on the campus of Africa International University. In the morning light, we had full view of the AIU campus, beautiful and sprawling with trees, gardens, and trimmed hedges. We walked the road that wound through campus while Steve told stories of all the years, all the students, and the development of a God-breathed vision to raise up Christian pastors that would carry the work of the gospel of Jesus Christ to all of Africa and the world beyond. We saw the place that was home to Pastor Steve, Jan, and their children during 8 years of teaching at AIU. Evidence of a life lived full, well, and sacrificially. We met graduate students who greeted Steve and Jan with deep respect and honor. In those first days in Nairobi, we saw the city, explored an elephant sanctuary, and visited the site of a fair trade workshop where talented women made beads for retail distribution. Afterward, we spent time helping Jan and Pastor Steve pack up their home, sort through memories, and carefully pack those things they would carry into their new lives that God planned for them at Bethel Christian Fellowship. A few days later, rested and ready, we met the rest of our group and traveled 200 miles across the border of Kenya into Tanzania. We reached the city of Musoma and spent the night literally on the shore of Lake Victoria. On Sunday morning, we traveled to Makoko to worship in a church led by Pastor Benesta Masana. The congregation greeted us with great joy, and the morning was full of worship, dancing, and celebration. This was also the day when the church gave gifts of food and provision to the widows and orphans in their church community. The women shared their stories of hardship, hope, and faith in our God who loves them, hears them, and sees them. The church leaders carefully measured the distribution of ground corn, demonstrating fairness and generosity with full and overflowing buckets to each woman according to the size of her household. Afterward, we walked to Benesta's home where there was a lavish meal prepared for us by his family. That evening, we saw the Musoma Church grounds, home to the Musoma Bible School, which is a branch of Lake Victoria Christian College. The next day, we visited Raphael, who is a pastor and a leader who provides oversight to 100-plus churches. Raphael introduced us to the congregations where we met some of the widows and fatherless children who live under the care of those church communities. Arriving later at Raphael's church, we were again greeted with joyful celebration and invited into the church where we worshiped and sang, the kids danced, and we witnessed again the distribution of food and provision to the widows and orphans of Raphael's flock. Benesta and Raphael traveled with us the next day to the city of Mwanza, where we visited the grounds of Lake Victoria Christian College. We arrived late, but friends were waiting with food and a joyful welcome in a large and beautiful church building with a floor that was financed through funds raised by Bethel Christian Fellowship. It was here that we met two more leaders who have been essential in the ongoing work of TEAM, Nestori and John Wanzalima. These leaders shared about the growing need among church pastors to have access to theological education and leadership training. Lake Victoria Christian College provides this training and education. All students at LVCC are active in ministry, and many are already pastoring churches. Some are in other ministries and then go on to plant more churches. The next morning we toured the college building. We saw the Bible school office, the classroom, and some of the dorm rooms, all of which are in desperate need of repair and upgrades. Afterward, we were warmly welcomed into John Wanzalima's home to rest and hear news about former students, growing families, and to thank God for the work that has been sustained over the years. Next door, we visited the home where Steve and Jan lived before moving on to Nairobi, a place they worked, raised their kids, and hosted teachers and pastors during their 13 years at Lake Victoria Christian College. The home has been rented and cared for by a trusted friend, and we felt the sweet spirit of God's favor over that place. The remaining days of our trip were spent visiting smaller villages where beloved pastors, trained through the TEAM ministry, are leading growing congregations, some in very remote areas of Tanzania. We traveled miles on roads that brought us through dramatic landscapes, punctuated by the color and vigor of small villages with busy marketplaces, filled with people who need to know the love of God and the truth of the gospel. The Pew Research Center says that 25% of the world's Christians are presently living in Africa, and predicts that number will grow to 40% by the year 2030. We saw some of the places where these growing populations of Christians will live and work and feed their families. Each of those Christians will need a church that is led by a pastor who's well prepared, supported by mentors, and able to preach the gospel from a base of grounded Christian theology. And that's what TEAM is all about.